Alrighty, let's just get the rest of this sorted. Um, um, I think everything is all good, so just gonna put it here so I can see the chat. Alrighty. Hello everybody! This is something that has kind of been in the works for a little while here. Basically, I wanted to kind of just like ramble and talk about stuff, and I figured I'm not very good at the whole editing video thing, so I'm just gonna try and do it through streaming. We'll get some nice little presentations going. If anyone has questions in the chat, I'm more than happy to answer and discuss stuff with them. But yeah. I think that's everything. I think we got it all sorted up. I hope you liked the little title there. So yeah, so my series essentially is going to be called Let's Talk. It's going to be a series of just random ass topics that caught my eye. And the first one that I really wanted to discuss was PAX Australia. I've been going for the past 4 years. And just some stuff that I think is just interesting to delve into. As someone that's been both an active participant and also a casual. So yeah, let's get this show on the road. So, for those that don't know, PAX is a gaming convention. It stands for Penny Arcade Expo. And it combines video games, a lot of like retro stuff, there's arcade, and there's quite a big tabletop section. So the Australian version of this, PAX Australia, began in 2013. It resides in Melbourne, Victoria, specifically the Melbourne Convention and Exhibition Centre. It's a 3-day event in October. That has been the case since, I believe, 2022. I can't really tell you pre-pandemic what it was like, but it seemed to be around that kind of place anyway. And it runs in conjunction with Melbourne International Games Week, which has gotten bigger and better as the years have gone on. 2 years ago, they introduced the Big Night Out, but you also have Parallels, which is really good. Yeah, it's just a big embracing of all things gaming, especially since Melbourne is kind of like the Australian indie scene. Yeah, so I think first of all, I think what I want to do for the people that have never been to PAX Aus, or the people that have considered it, basically, I think for me, these are the 6 things that have really come to mind over the past 4 years. The first one, you kind of have to bring a water bottle to refill. It gets quite hot, very humid, and it's spring. So having one of those is almost crucial. Secondly, take a battery pack. The amount of times that my battery for my phone or whatever has gotten quite low, like midday, too many to count. Have one on charge. The main reason though is just because, I mean, especially in my case, when you have like the PAX guide and the PAX map and stuff like that, that's gonna drain quite a lot of your battery anyway. If you're trying to get in contact with other people, it goes quicker than you anticipate to. The third one, I would say, wear comfortable shoes. You're gonna be doing a lot of walking, it it looks deceptively small, but the amount of walking, even just in the expo hall as a whole, like it's all quite condensed. But you're just gonna be going up and down, up and down, up and down, trying to see all there is to offer. Just wear comfortable shoes. Your feet will thank you. Um, so number four, I think this one is a more personalized thing because the first three are kind of like, I mean, not generic kind of advice, but it's more just almost no-brainer stuff. Number four, I think, is a very PAX Aus thing. Go in with somewhat of a game plan, but don't be afraid to change things. That's what the guide is for. I have a whole plan that I usually do because you've got to like where there's like tabletop stuff, there's the handheld lounge, there's the indie like the indies, you have your AAA stuff, there's panels. You're gonna get overwhelmed if you're not prepared going in. And that's not even including pins. Pins are like such a core part of PAX as a whole, and you kind of have to do certain things at certain times to get them. You can't just pay for them all. Sometimes they require certain activities, so you need to accommodate for that as well. Go in with a game plan. Just, it doesn't have to be an in-depth itinerary, but you go in with some idea as to what you're going to prioritize. But don't necessarily stick to it. As I said, if something takes your fancy, but it's, you know, on the same time as something else that you had planned, don't be afraid to change it. Just, as I said, you just don't want to feel bombarded. You don't want to feel bombarded, essentially. Number five. This is kind of a bit of a segue with number three. Expect to be in quite a few queues throughout the weekend. Everything is queues. Well, I mean, gaming and panels in particular. Like, those two things, you're going to be lining up. You're going to be doing a lot of it, so just be prepared to stand or sit, whatever you choose to do. But you're going to be doing quite a lot of it. And number six, this one is more just my personal preference. You don't have to follow this one, but I do think it's quite helpful. Saturday is the busiest day of the 3 days. If you want to play AAAs, try not to do it on the Saturday if you can. If you have a 2-day or a 3-day, basically, if you have another day besides Saturday available, prioritize that then. I would honestly go for the indies on the Saturday. Those always have quite short lines, but also a lot of the panels, at least for me, a lot of the ones that I was really interested in were also on a Saturday anyway. So it kind of made that an easy decision for me to just, you know, be able to prioritize effectively. So I want to start with the beginning. So for me, that was PAX Aus 2022. Now, PAX had always been something that I was kind of interested in, but I never really committed to, mainly because I'm from New South Wales and PAX is in Victoria. So, totally different state of Australia, and it requires quite a lot of preparation ahead of time to make sure that you can even get there. A lot of people are like, oh, do you do the South by West after? Because that one is in New South Wales. But honestly, I think when it comes to the gaming landscape in Australia, PAX is the place that you should at least go once. I will admit though that I didn't really I didn't know what I was getting into, so I'll get into that in a second. But so my overall thoughts of PAX Aus 2022 for me, I mean, when I say PAX is mostly enough, I mean for me. Like, I was kind of more just. It was the first time I was going to Melbourne, And PAX was just kind of an event that we were going to, but honestly, it was like secondary to just seeing what Melbourne had to offer, the CBD, say the like the general CBD. So you had like your MCG, your Melbourne Museum, your Immigration Museum, had some great parks. Um, as I said, we were only there for 3 days. Uh, 4. We got in on the Thursday. We left on the Monday. But essentially, we were trying to cram all of these things in alongside PAX. So I kind of don't really remember a whole lot about PAX Aus 2022. From what I do remember, though, it was enjoyable, but it kind of felt like it was a bit unpolished at times, which I am happy to excuse somewhat because it was the first um, there that was like, you know, pre-pandemic. Like as I said, I don't really remember what it was like pre-pandemic, but being coming back after what was it, 2 years. I think one of them was online, I believe. Um, So yeah, I think everyone was just trying to get back into the swing of things. So I don't fully blame them for it being a bit unpolished. But I do think what was noticeable was that none of the big three, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, attended. So it was kind of dominated by indies and PC stuff. And in a way, I kind of feel like that was an interesting experience. I mean, especially as like like easing your way into what PAX would eventually become in the next few years. Like you kind of didn't feel as overwhelmed in a way because indies had such a core part of 2022, and I didn't particularly care for the PC stuff. I still don't. Most of that stuff just glazes over me. I'm not particularly interested with that. But yeah, because of that, I think it's a borderline pass. I gave it a 6 out of 10, but again, in my defense, I don't really remember a whole lot of it. But that was just kind of how I was feeling. But what I do remember was some of the indies that I remember playing. I try to on my Twitter. I try to log all of my favorite games that I played each PAX. Try to give them a shout out. Just you know, just like a bit of a acknowledgement kind of thing. Like they put in the work for putting in these booths. They want the exposure. They want people to notice them. So yeah. I will say though, my 3 favorite indie games. It is a bit weird because one of them, one of them is very obviously bigger than the other two there. So we'll get that one out of the way. Call to the Lamb. Like, I love how big of a presence Call to the Lamb has with PAX in the last few years. You had the wedding 2 years ago. You had another big thing that escapes me. You had that last year. But Call to the Lamb always just seems to have a presence at PAX, and I love them for that so much. Um, the game is quite. You know what Call to the Lamb is. You don't need me to explain to you what Call to the Lamb is. It's one of those breakout in Australian indie games. You know, congrats to Massive Monster. They deserve all the praise that they want. So the other two, we'll dive a bit more into those two. So Gubbins is, I don't know if it's besides mobile, but it was just a really fun word game. I don't really have much else to really describe. It's more just, it's like, I don't want to call it a roguelike, but I guess you build your deck and you try to get as far in as possible, making making the words available. And then Tempopo, a lot of people, a lot of people should know Tempopo. Witchbeam obviously made the big breakout hit Unpacking. If you played Unpacking, that game is amazing. And then they made Tempopo. They showed that off at PAX 2022, and then you heard nothing until essentially release. But it's like a puzzle rhythm game, and I think it's such an interesting idea. Um, and yeah, those three were the ones that just really like caught my eye. Um, yeah, so that's 2022. I mean, again, it's a bit of a weird start because I didn't really have much, not memory necessarily, because I do remember things, but again, PAX 2022 wasn't really the focus. I couldn't really even tell you what panels that I saw in that first year. Um, PAX 2023, on the other hand, I think that was when I started to finally pay attention to what was going on. So I I think it was quite a step up from 2022. I think having Nintendo and Sega having big booths in the middle kind of had like your whole 90s rivalry vibes to it. I mean, obviously, I think the ideal would be having Nintendo, Sega, um, Microsoft, and Sony having, you know, a whole section. Um, that's not happened to date. It's gotten close, but it's not happened yet. Um, and yeah, as I was saying beforehand with 2022, this year I definitely remember that I went to see a few more panels that caught my interest. Um, that being said, for me, the highlight was just getting to meet some YouTubers and Twitch streamers throughout the weekend, some of which I will be discussing in further detail in the next couple slides. But that being said, I've really got invested in the pins. Like, it hooked me in a way. Because, like, 2022, I didn't really know that there was even really a pin thing going on. Like, you kind of got, like, little trinkets and stuff from the indie stuff, but again, there was no real major focus. Um, so yeah, I think that was the first year that I got addicted, and then as we get into 2024 and 2025, that's when I made much more of a focus on it. That being said, I do think it was a step up on Nintendo and like, with having Nintendo and Sega there. I think that was just the big draw. It was really good to have them there. Um, but I felt like there could be a bit more, and I do think that that would be the case next, like 2024. That was when that starts to happen. But we'll get there in a sec. For now, the top three favorite indie games showcased. Now, like 2022, one of them is kind of a standout compared to the other two there. And that's not a discredit to the other two, because these are my top three. But Dredge. Like, so I should explain. Dredge is New Zealand, it's not Australian dev, but there is a section of PAX called Code. I do not remember what Code stands for at the moment, it escapes me. But essentially, that's the New Zealand showcase booth. And Dredge was one of those games. And it hooked me, pun intended, in with its mechanics. Like, again, Dredge, it's just one of those games where I don't feel like I need to explain Dredge. It's escaped the indie scene in a way and just become that mainstream fishing game that's not Dave the Diver. The other two, Broken Roads. I think Broken Roads is very fascinating. Um, it is a shame what happened at launch, but it's in a much better state now, which is good to see. But it happens. But I just kind of love this whole RPG set in the outback kind of thing, where you can have different interactions with people and have that affect gameplay. That's always nice. Um, I think Letters to Rala was the big surprise though, because Broken Roads had quite a bit of a presence in 2023, but Letters to Rala is just so damn charming for essentially delivering letters in a vegetable version of, I believe it's Victoria. Don't quote me on that. But it's so fascinating how deceptively on first glance it looks like it's a game for not babies but like kids. It's very like pastelly colors, and you have the goofy, vegetable designs, but it actually is very mechanically sound in a way that I was not expecting. Um, so yeah, those kinda were the three favorites for 2023. But now we get into 2024. So, apologies for how awful that design is. I could not find any good any good blown up versions of the PAX 2024 logo. So we'll just quickly move on. So for me, 2024 was my favorite of the four. That being said, because of reasons we'll get to in a second, it was far more chaotic for me on the Friday and the Saturday. But it had some of my favorite panels. It had some of the most exciting indie games, I think, on show. Um, Nintendo not being there was a bit of a whiplash for me. I kind of understand why. The Switch was, its presence was far less. They were preparing for the Switch 2 in 2025. So I kind of get it, but it was still a shame that they weren't there. Microsoft, though, took its place. It had a little like bar kind of thing, I think, or like cave. I don't quite remember. They were there, but it was more like it wasn't Microsoft per se. It was more PC Game Pass, which I found kind of weird, kind of interesting that they chose to go with that angle as opposed to here is Xbox like they would do in 2025. That in itself kind of was a very mixed showing there anyway. But yeah, as I said, Nintendo not being there was weird. Microsoft being there was nice. Um, Sony still has not participated yet. I'm not sure why there's such a pushback by Sony to not have presence at PAX. I don't know. That being said, I think overall, 9 out of 10. I don't think I've been to a 10 out of 10 yet, but I think this is the closest that it's gotten to so far. That being said, 2024 was also the year that I got to do my first ever panel. And that was kind of a big deal for me in a way because I didn't think it was going to happen. I don't really have presence in the gaming sphere. I'm kind of just a nobody in a way. I'm sure there are people that can attest to that if you go check the archives of those panels on other like on Jack's channel. You know, I'm not really much of a presence, and in a way, I kind of knew that, and I knew that I would need to kind of overcome that feeling in a way if I wanted to deliver what I wanted. But let's get to that. So, my first ever panel was called Wherever, Whenever, Forever, celebrating the PS1's 30th anniversary. Now, I don't want to delve too much into why I did what I did, but the general consensus that came about when I went to do this panel was that out of the 2 years that I'd been, I kind of didn't feel like there was a panel that really fully resonated with my interests. Like, you always had like your fast day, like your esports stuff and mental health and gaming, and all of those are kind of important, but they're not really fun topics, you know? And I kind of just wanted a fun panel, and I went with the mindset of I wanted to do a panel that I wanted to see. And for me, that's kind of like the 90s systems. In particular, for me, I grew up with the PlayStation 1. That was my first ever console, and I just kind of think that's such a fascinating, unique time to to delve into, really, because you're transitioning from the 2D of like your your SNES and your Genesis, and it was kind of like the first real foray into 3D gaming, you know. So there was no real. It was kind of a free for all, a bit of a wild west, if you would, you know. So yeah, I just kind of find that such a fascinating angle. But then I didn't want to do it as just, you know, a just, oh, let's talk about PlayStation. I kind of wanted to make it substantial, bit of an event, if you will. And finding out that it was the 30th anniversary of the PS1, it just kind of felt like it just kind of felt like it was all combining in a way. So, yeah, I think what I also wanted to do from this panel is that I kind of wanted to take everyone's ideas on board. As someone that's never really done it, you know, I feel like having everyone's input, at least to some extent, obviously things need to be like confined and changed, um, is important. But yeah, as I said, I didn't really know what I was getting myself into per se. And I will say, I think for me, having no real gaming presence, the hardest part for me, for both 2024 and 2025, in particular 2025, is not having the contacts that I needed. Um, but I also didn't want to just go for anyone in particular. I wanted to go for people that I always wanted to work with, and they all kind of have different perspectives in a way. So, for the first person for me that I managed to get on board was Matthew Dyson. Uh, Mido. I'm not gonna. I'm sorry, Mido. I'm not gonna attempt trying to pronounce your full username. Get a shorter username. Um, but he had a channel called Game Score Fanfare. Well, I had a channel. It's still there, but it's a YouTube channel called Game Score Fanfare, and one of my favorite sections of that channel was when he would delve into Final Fantasy music. Now, for me, Final Fantasy and PlayStation go hand in hand, so I kind of needed, I kind of wanted that expertise in a way. You know, I wasn't really into the RPGs at the time. My brain capacity couldn't really handle it, but you know, having Matthew on board, he could talk about a lot of those like RPG games, your Final Fantasies, yeah, Legend of Dragoon, stuff like that. Um, and then sorry, I managed to get Ruby Innes on board, and for me, this was the first time that I kind of felt like it was possible to do this. Because when you go to apply for a panel, you need to have your panelists on board, you needed to have your idea, your synopsis, and stuff like that. So you kind of needed to have the bulk of it sorted out before you can even apply. So that's to me why it was the hardest, is because if I couldn't get the panelists sorted, there is no panel. So getting Ruby on board was such a big deal. I had a contact that knew her, recommended her. She got back to me, was like, "Yes, um, I love the PlayStation. I have some weird games that I want to talk about," and that was the in. I think from that point on, I knew that we were almost close to a panel sorting. Um, and then it came to Square Eye Jack. So Jack and I would say we're pretty good mates now. But my problem that I had with Square Eye Jack to begin with is that, I mean, he's got quite a good presence on YouTube. I think maybe he's like close to 100K. I don't know. I don't really know the exact amount, but he has quite a decent following on YouTube. And the problem that I had internally was I thought he was really good. He had the PlayStation know-how. He's talked a lot about Crash Bandicoot, your Tony Hawk's, blah blah blah. All of them had a presence on the PlayStation, right? But he had done a panel a few years prior about Y2K gaming. And for me, that was my worry, right? I didn't want to make him feel like he was just repeating what he had done prior. Like, and he did enjoy the experience, but um, he had a bit of, he had some feedback, right? So, yeah, the fact that he did say yes was quite a big, uh, was quite a big deal, you know, because I kind of felt fun. I felt like we fully rounded out the panel, right? And so we go in. I was extremely nervous throughout because obviously, you know, an anniversary panel. I mean, it seems like it's nothing, but it kind of, you kind of want to do the system that you grew up with justice. So yeah, we really like, we spent a few good weeks back and forth just trying to figure out how we were going to approach it. And then a few weeks prior, I tried to organize the panel in a way that I thought would be really um, fluid. It would be like, oh, we would use OBS, and we could just seamlessly transition between um, the presentation and footage, because that was kind of always what we wanted to do, right? Is that we wanted to incorporate footage into what we were talking about, just so the audience, for the people that hadn't played the games before, could see what those games looked like. Um, it wasn't the end all be all, but it was just kind of, how do we stand out in a way? And I feel like that was one of those ways that we really wanted to do that. So we go in, and already we're kind of on the back foot because I was running a bit behind than I wanted to. Um, and then we go in, we use my partner's laptop, and it's dead. Now, I don't know why it was dead, because it was charged the night before, and it was a pretty decent, okay laptop. Um, and then, so we go in, the laptop's dead. So we have to wait for the laptop to turn on. And all of the stuff is on the laptop. Um, and the problem is that they couldn't do the sound check until they had the presentation. So, laptop's dead, it eventually gets turned on, and then we tried to run OBS on the laptop. So I should explain. So we had the OBS on our main computer, and it worked fine. And so we transferred everything as it was onto the laptop. I tried it on the laptop, it worked fine. Ish. But I figured we could, like, it was just, I don't know. Had issues. So we used the laptop, HDMI didn't work, so already like, oh no, this is getting bad. And then, yeah, so what they had to do essentially was just get all of these files and just kind of rebuild the presentation while people were waiting outside. And so that was the other big problem that we had. People were starting to line up because we only get half-hour leeway from entering to the start of the start of the show. Yeah, but essentially we were rebuilding the presentation while people were waiting outside, and to make matters worse, I mean, it's not worse. It was more just to add on to the stress. Someone had found that PlayStation icon Shuhei Yoshida was going to be in the audience. Now, it wasn't a total surprise from us that he was there. I mean, it was a surprise that he came to the panel. But we knew he was in Melbourne because he had posted about being part of Melbourne National Games Week. So we knew that he was there, and we knew that he would probably be there for some of the PlayStation indies. But we didn't know he was coming to the panel. And so while all of this was going on, we get informed that he's literally outside waiting to come in. And, oh my god, shit hit the fan. It was fucking rough. It was disastrous. We were just trying to compose ourselves, and it was a very unpleasant time. So basically, unfortunately, while all that stuff was happening, it went over 12:30 because our panel was at 12:30. So I think it was 12:35, and they're like, "We can't keep the people out. That we need to bring them in." And Ruby, God bless her, Ruby was like, "Yes," without realizing that the audio hadn't been sorted. So everyone was coming in. I'm drenched of sweat because I'm constantly running back and forth between the stage, sorting out audio and getting the presentation to fucking work. Jack was helping me out. God bless the man. He's so good. Amito's freaking out because of Shuhei Yoshida. Ruby was only the only composed one out of the four of us. And so yeah, when you watch Jack's video on YouTube, that's why we had no audio for the first 10 minutes of the panel, because we didn't have, they were just trying to sort it all out and we were just on the back foot. So yeah, and then we gave them all of the footage, right? Because one of the only good things that I did was I compartmentalized each of the gameplay clips and each of the slides. I've done them all separately as well. So that was the only saving grace we had. And so once they got the audio sorted, then they finally got the actual presentation running. And already that was a bit of an issue because we were trying to, like, the way that it was going to be was that I was going to be up on the podium, I would have control of the slides, and then that would be, that would be how it is, they wouldn't have to do much on their end, the tech people, and I would have all of the control. But the problem that I was having was I kind of felt like I was disjointed from the rest of the group. So I kind of wanted to be down on the actual panel part and make it more of a conversation rather than, Q&A style. You have a host and you have your panelists. I didn't want it to be like that. So we tried to work around it, having the screen on the bottom, because how it was, you had this little bar, and it told you how long you had up until 1 hour. But then behind that, you had screens, so you could see what they were seeing up there. And I would have a screen that would show the slides, so I could see what was going on. But unfortunately, because of the angling, there was a lot of glare, and it was really kind of hard to tell from that angle specifically, because, again, I think it was meant more for the podium as opposed to sitting down on the panel itself. So what we just did is that we just let them do it. We were like, hey, we will kind of give you audio cues to know when to do the when to go to the next slide, essentially. And then luckily they kind of understood, went on board, incorporated the clips, which happened towards the latter half, got some audio involved, which was really great of them. And yeah, so even though the first half of that panel was kind of a bit rocky, some would call it amateur. I wouldn't go that far. I think it was more just unfortunate circumstance. The latter half, which was really the meat, like there was one bit in particular that we really wanted to do, and the fact that that turned out as well as it did, we were happy about that. But yeah, it was really good. We did end up getting to meet Shuhei Yoshida afterwards. He stayed around. We all just really appreciated him being there, thanked him for his contribution to PlayStation and all that. He said he really liked it, and that was... We had a bit of a heart-to-heart. We were talking about, like, the problems with technology, which felt fitting, and how he was they were kind of also doing the same thing. It being their own first console, it was kind of a lot of a learning experience for them as well. He was grateful for Mido for talking about one of his direct games that he was involved with. It was a really nice bonding experience. And yeah, so unfortunately, in the photo on the bottom right there, that's the three of us, but Mido had to run off the joys of being married and having a kid. So yeah, it was just a really fun time. And I also want to give a huge shout out again to my mate Daniel. He made the logo. He didn't have to do it, but we kind of wanted to just kind of have this symbolic thing that was so striking that you couldn't not think of it. And so we really wanted to focus in on having like a dark gray background, having like neonish colors for the symbols, and of course I think the most iconic part of the logo, which is the infinity, which was kind of meant to be a tie-in to the forever part um, of the actual tagline. A few people didn't know what that was in reference to. A lot of people were like, "Oh, I love Shakira," and yeah, it's hard not to, but it was to explain for those that aren't familiar. Basically, when the PS1 revision came out, that was the specific tagline. It was also used in one of the demo discs, and I kind of just felt like having the forever signal, like the forever part of wherever, whenever, forever, kind of tied in nicely to like an anniversary aspect. I don't know if it ever came across that way. That was the intention, but yeah. So that was pretty much everything that happened in regards to my first ever panel. And you can tell that I had a lot to talk about because that was over half of the stream so far. And we still have one more to go. But before we get to 2025, like 2022 and 2023, I want to talk about my favorite games that I played. And for me, it was these three. So, Rita, For those that are familiar with my channel, they would know that I've played the Reader demo. Spork Tank, he even follows this channel, which is very nice of him. Um, I get along with him. He's such an awesome guy. Can't wait for the full release. It's going to be sometime this year. And you bet I am going to play the game in its entirety. I'm so excited. Aussie Boken Hero. That's another game that I have played the demo of. I played it for the last demo one, actually. And that was quite a lot of fun. It was just really funny seeing these exaggerated Australian locales. Can't talk. These Australian locales, and just kind of like adding like a Metroidvania style to it. But if we're talking about Metroidvanias, Rat Trap is the one that I'm still most excited for. I think there's so much potential. It kind of evoked Metroid, but in such a unique, cartoony aesthetic. I do hope the next time that I do one of these demos, I do try Rat Trap, because I had so much fun with it at PAX in 2024. And I can't wait to see how it's developing because, yeah, as I said, that game gripped me from the get go and didn't let go until the end of it. Um, yeah, so that is 2024. Again, as I said, it was my favorite of the panel of the PAXs that we went to. But of course, got to talk about last year, PAX Aus 2025. Again, I like couldn't find a good picture of this, so we're just gonna move on. So for this one, I still quite liked it. I don't think I liked it as much as 2024, as I was saying. That being said, I think a lot of the stress that I had from 2024 wasn't there purely because I feel like I kind of had a bit of an idea now what I was getting myself into with 2025. Uh, I was a lot more prepared, and I think the people that have seen the PlayStation 2 one will know. But like, you could tell that it was a lot more prepared ahead of time, which is really good. But yeah, it meant that I kind of really got to like enjoy the Friday and the Saturday more. The timing being for both panels being the exact same time, but just in different theaters, is still very funny to me. Um, yeah, I still can't believe I got two panels, let alone one. I know I'm being a bit presumptuous here. I would love to do another one in 2026. I hope I do. I have a nice idea planned. Um, and I hope it comes to fruition. I would kind of like to make it a good trilogy of sorts. That being said, so one of the big frustrating things about PAX. So what they would do, they would have this limited edition pin based on the ibis or the bin chicken, whatever you want to call it. And it's a kind of a rare um, pin to get. In previous years, you often had to wait in line and trade a pin that you already got in exchange for that, and that was quite annoying, but it kind of worked. But this year, they combined it with another thing that they do, which is called PAX XP, which is a series of QR codes that are all around the convention exhibition center. And the idea is that you scan all of them, it would make a picture, you would go to the front, and you would get a prize. In previous years, it would be going into a draw to win like a big prize. Year before that, I believe it was like a bottle opener, which had like PAX engraved on it. It's really cool stuff. But this year, well, last year, it's still weird. I'm in January. It still feels like 2025. Um, yeah, last year they combined the PAX XP QR code thing with a limited edition pin, and that didn't really go to plan. Now, I was luckily not affected by that. I think it was just a really not thought out plan to combine those two. But essentially, someone had gone in before. So basically, content creators and media get 1 hour access into the the expo hall before everyone else, so they can look at games. Blah 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 blah. Someone, I don't know who, and even if I did, I wouldn't say, but I don't know who, took photos of every single PAX XP that was inside the expo hall, meaning that meaning that people had access to all of the QR codes before the expo hall even officially opened. And that meant that people were getting all of the all of the QR codes and started lining up for the pin at around 12 o'clock on the Friday. And it kind of only got exacerbated more on the Saturday and the Sunday because it meant that you didn't really you didn't really have a chance. You just kind of had to know where everything was, take all of the photos, and then uh, line up and just hope that there's stuff in stock. See, the problem with the limited edition pins already, as is, was there weren't enough. There were not enough, because I guess that's the point of limited edition. But adding this extra thing that makes it even easier to get was dumb. It was frustrating. We did it legit. We did get the pin, but it was dumb. Um, I think one of the other main things that I had a bit of a problem with was that it kind of felt a bit more corporate than in previous years, which is quite ironic, I know, because obviously AAA is corporate on its own. But yeah, the eBay integration didn't work this year, and they made a big deal about having eBay involved. That is big booth in the back. It just didn't need to be there. I don't know. Like I get it, it was probably a funding thing, but it just didn't work. It was an eyesore. It was frustrating. It didn't add anything to PAX. Um, But again, that being said, Nintendo returned, Microsoft returned, and so it was the best AAA showing to date. You know, it was really cool having Nintendo there, showing off their Switch 2, showing off Mario Kart and Kirby Air Riders and Pokemon Legends EA, and it was very exciting and had a nice big Nintendo store like they did in 2022. So sorry, 2023. Um, yeah, it was really good. Xbox was a bit interesting because they had this kind of narrow booth in a way. You would like walk in and it's supposed to look like a Series X, I guess. And you're supposed to be. It was like a presentation happening around you where they showed off all their upcoming games and it was cool, I guess. And then once the presentation finished, you went out and you got to try the Steam Deck or the Xbox Series X, and it was. I sorry, not the Steam Deck. What am I saying? The Steam Deck. The Xbox Rogue Ally X, whatever that thing is. And I will say, I kind of enjoyed it. Um, but I don't know. It was kind of forgettable in a way. I kind of wanted them to do a bit more, I guess. I think the presentation thing was kind of nice, but it also meant that it was long because the presentation itself would go on for like 5 whole minutes, and I was just very lucky to have 20 minutes to spare and got in, tried a little bit of stuff, and yeah, look, it was interesting. I don't think Microsoft have gotten their boothing right yet. But if you want to talk about shocking boothing, oh my god, the Sims one. So I'm going to go on quite a little bit of a tangent here. The Sims in 2024 was kind of pretty decent. Their one was outside the expo hall. They had like a tarot card reader because it was like I think it was like a tarot kind of thing. They had like goodie bags. You could take a photo with the Grim Reaper. Ah, that's it. I think it was the life and death one. Anyway, so I mean, it wasn't much, but it wasn't inconvenient. Whereas this year's Sims booth was just so cramped, and you had like 5 to 6 different queues going all at once in different directions. They had an archery thing. They had a free play thing. They had a photo thing. You could take a photo with it, and it was just they had a claw machine. It just felt so unnecessarily convoluted, and in the space that they were given, it did not work, and you could not move. It was so cramped, and the time that you got in there wasn't worth it. I hope that if The Sims comes back this year, they get their act together, because yeah, wasn't a whole lot of fun there. Yeah, I mean that's kind of all I really have in regards to the booths. In regards to the panels, I don't think they were as exciting as 2024, but there were still quite a few that did take a fancy. But yeah, as I said, I think 2024 was such a strong showing in every facet that yeah, 2025 was kind of hard to top, and it didn't. um, but that being said, look, even though I didn't have as much of an interest to watch panels as I did last year, like in the prior, I still think it was quite a good showing overall, which is why I gave it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, so that's the overall stuff. But now we're gonna talk about the panel itself. So, as I said, in my mind, I always wanted to do a trilogy. Like, if I could get the first one on board, which I did, I think I always wanted to do a direct follow up, which um, I think was both easier and more difficult in different ways. I think, as I said, from the get go, having PS2 turning 25 was such a oh my god, that's so cool. Let's do a direct follow up that kind of improves on what we did from its predecessor in a thematic way that is kind of what the PS2 did for the PS1 itself. You know what I mean? Like, if PS1 was growing pains and seeing what worked and what didn't, PS2 was the refinement. And that was kind of the approach going into the panel as well. Um, as I said, I had a lot of tech issues, and I kind of wanted to make sure that I rectified most of those issues because you don't want to waste their time necessarily. Like the audience, they're coming to take an hour of their time from playing games or seeing another panel or eating lunch because it was at 12:30 again. But I think I just wanted to make sure that every mistake that I made last time didn't happen this time. And I would say, as a whole, we kind of achieved that, which I'm very, very grateful for. That being said, I also think one of our favorite parts of the 2024 panel was when the audience got involved. So we did a thing because we were running late and we were just trying to get tech stuff sorted. Jack decided to talk to the crowd. You know, what was their first game? What was your favorite? Blah blah blah. You know, and we kind of liked that so much that we wanted to incorporate it again, but in a more formal capacity. You know, so we wanted to make sure that audience participation was kind of more of a priority, because I think, as I said, when the audience takes the time to go out and see you for an hour, you kind of want to make it worth their while. We I made little pins, and we stuck it on the front row of the actual the audience as like a thank you kind of thing for being the first in line and wanting to do that, you know, just we just wanted to get the audience more involved. That being said, there was one big problem that I had, and that would be that the only person that I would retain from the 2024 panel was Jack. Which meant that I now had to find two more panelists. And look, as I said, in the long run, it did work out, but I was stressed and I almost quit doing it twice. At least I can recall twice of that being the case where I just didn't want to do it. But that being said, um, Jack knew Color Shed, and I knew Color Shed because we in 2022. So sorry, not 2023. We they did a meet and greet essentially. It was Jack, it was Color Shed, and it was Mini Me. Um, and as I said, it was really cool meeting them for the first time in 2023. Um, I still love that Spyro outfit that he wore. Very funny. Anyway, so yeah, I had some prior interaction with Color Shed, and yeah, look, as I said, I knew that he would talk about the PS2, but I didn't really know if he was game enough to want to do a panel because it would be his first panel, and someone that had to do the panel for the first time last year. It's kind of nervous, um, you know. But in a way, I think it's a little bit different though because like he has an already established following. I think I don't know if Color Shed or Jack has the most subscribers. Doesn't matter. But the point being that I think for me, my big problem going into a panel was that, again, I had no following. So the amount of imposter syndrome that I felt in 2024, especially 2024, and a little bit in 2025, um, you know, you just, you want to feel like you're of the same caliber in a way, you know? You may not have the same following, but you just kind of want the chemistry to work. And I think that was one of the strengths of 2024 in particular, was just that we all just gelled really well. And now we're doing the second panel syndrome, the second anything syndrome, where you just want to try to recapture that lightning in a bottle. You kind of want to make sure that everyone, like, talks and just gels, and, you know, you could just feel the camaraderie in a way. Um, So, but yeah, having Color Shed on board is really cool, but um, it was a little bit frustrating losing Ruby in particular because I feel like she brought a lot of zany energy, which I think I had to I had to kind of bring that zany energy this time around. But yeah, so I asked a friend of mine, and she's a VTuber, Icy Mind Racer. I asked her if she was interested, and the one concern I had, it wasn't about her specifically, it was more just the fact that it would be the first time that she would properly show her face in a public setting. I didn't know if she would be up for it. I mean, I understand, like, there's a bit of a reserved nature to VTubers, you know, that's why they have the personas that they do, and, you know. But no, she was awesome. It was really cool having her say yes, and from that point on, we all kind of went in, you know. Having I think everyone knowing at least someone, you know. I obviously knew Jack from the previous year, but I also knew IC. I had brief interaction with Color Shed. Jack and Color Shed had quite a had a good relationship, obviously. So having like kind of like a web of connection, I think, always meant you had someone to bounce off with, which I think really benefited the panel. Um, but yeah, no. In regards to the panel itself, as I said, we were so fixed on making sure the mistakes of the previous year didn't happen that everything ran so smoothly. And I just kind of want to thank everyone for that because I could not deal with another year of panic attacks. um, yeah, for everyone in the tech crew was amazing. I think I did a great job of having everything prepared. Um, Everyone kind of knew what they were doing. We didn't have the timer this time around, so we kind of had to um, instinctively know in our heads we have 6 major topics. It means we have up to about 10 minutes per topic. You know, well, it will be a bit of a leeway with that stuff, but you know, like that was the idea, right? So we kind of knew going in what we needed to do, and we all think did delivered quite well. Um, and yeah, no, as I said, I really am glad that the audience really enjoyed it again. Because at the end of the day, that's the most that I want to get out of these panels again. I wanted to make panels that I wanted to see, and you know, I think that we did that. Um, yeah, so that was a very interesting 2025 panel. I hope that 2026, if we get it, goes even better than that. So, we're getting towards the end of our talk. Um, so, for me, the top 3 favorite indies, um, I mean, a lot of them are still in the works, but Tito was just such a fun platformer. You know, you get to try all these different costumes and have them affect ability. It's your Banjo Kazooie, you know what I mean? Your Mario, where you have like power ups and stuff and all that jazz. But it's just so fun. Like, look at that art style. That's adorable. Brave Kart is really funny because it is a satirical take on the rival on not the rivalry, but like the duopoly that Alpha Barn and what's the other one called? Anyway, it's supposed to be a pastiche on Coles and Woolworths in Australia, which is really funny. And it's a puzzle game where you try to collect all the trolley carts. I think it's gonna do so well. It might not blow the world by storm, but my god, am I gonna have so much fun with it. The other one is Bones Wandering Soul. It's another platformer, but you kind of get to detach body limbs to overcome obstacles, and I think that's such a unique idea. And the art style is very gritty in a way, like it makes you kind of feel, you know, it's a different kind of vibe. And I hope that these games come back in 2026 and we get to see how they evolve over the course of 12 months, which I think is one of the best parts of PAX in all honesty, seeing these games constantly return year on year until their release and just seeing how games improve and evolve. Um, I will, before, because this is essentially the last slide, I will take any questions. Um, What are you doing for 2026? I'm not telling yet. Um, I look. I want 2026's panel, if it's successful, to kind of be a culmination of uh, everything that I've done in the last 2 years, both literally and metaphorically. It will not be it will not be a PS3 panel. I'm sorry to disappoint you all. I didn't have a PS3. I grew up with the Wii, and we were dictated by whatever the family console was. So, yeah, it was PS1, and then we had PS2 because we could play PS1 games and DVDs, and then it was the Wii because motion controls. Um, Look, I'm just reading some of the chat. Um, Look, I think PAX can improve a bit. I think layout wise, I think it's not fully there yet. I do think overall the layout of 2025 was the best, but I think I think it kind of needs to be a blend of the indies of 2022 and 2025. Kind of need to mix those together. Um, yeah, look, I don't disagree with the funding, like the eBay integration. Like, I understand conceptually why it had to happen. I just kind of think it was a bit of an eyesore when you're going from the triple A's and all the esporty tournament stuff, and then you just have this big ass eBay booth right before you head to the tabletop stuff. Um, I look. I don't play many tabletop games. That's why none of them are here. I just don't often have the patience for them. I think my partner loves tabletop stuff, so at least they balance me out. But yeah, look, I think it's just an accessibility thing to me. Like, you can kind of just get into the games when it's like video games, whereas with tabletop, there's quite a lot of setup. There's quite a lot of you know imagination involved, a lot of improv, and that stuff doesn't necessarily come naturally to me. So, I mean, I've done tabletop in the past, like it's not like I've ignored it outright, but like when it comes to PAX, and you have 3 days to use as you see fit, as I said before, when we're talking about um, prioritization. For me, if I had the choice between picking two indie games that I can jump in and play for 10 minutes, that's the end of the demo, or play one tabletop game, I'm gonna pick the two indies. You know what I mean? It's just it's just investment in a way, right? As I said, like, my partner, she will bring all these games that she's like, oh, I saw this at PAX and I really liked it, I bought it, we should try it out. Then it's not so bad because we have the time and it's usually in a more casual setting, there are less people around. That's the other thing. It's very noisy in the expo hall, right? So do you either want to put on headphones, just immerse yourself in what's on the screen for a few minutes, and then go do it again? Or do you want to try to yell on top of one another just to um, just to progress through the game? And like I said, there's been a lot of fun games, but you know, as I said, tabletop isn't really for me, but I acknowledge its place and its importance. Yeah. Um. All right. I think that's everything. So I will end it there. Um. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I think that it was a very interesting experience doing something like this. I hope that, you know, this kind of takes off. I would love to see what people think about PAX in the comments. And yeah, I hope to do something like this very, very soon. I do have other ideas in mind. I have a lot of stuff to talk about. I was thinking, just a bit of a teaser, I kind of want to talk about Doctor Who. I'm not going to be a Who tuber, but I would love to talk about Doctor Who in the next one, and I hope that you are interested in that. But I will end it there, so until then, see ya.